My name is Brian Lynch. I'm going to talk to you over the next 40 minutes or so about various aspects of our emotional lives. In particular, the emotions of shame and interest and the continuum of shame and humiliation. This was first presented at a Human Dignity and Humiliation Studies conference in Oslo, Norway. There I visited the Vigeland Sculpture Garden. This is one of the sculptures around a magnificent fountain in the garden. I want you to pay a particular attention to the posture of the figures. I want you to keep it in mind. Shortly, I will show you several movie clips. One of the participants in the first clip, Alan Price, the piano player, whose posture changes dramatically. I'm a family doctor who mostly now does psychotherapy. I have become more and more involved in the psychological aspects of medicine in the last 10 years after coming across the work of Sylvan Tompkins and Donald Nathanson. This talk has several titles. This title is to address the general themes of this discussion. The next slide can be considered a subtitle, Shame and Humiliation as Unifying Concepts for the Origin of Violence. I specifically addressed shame and violence in a talk in Mexico City in September of 2008. That talk you can find on my website. I specifically note this as the second clip I will present most definitely deals with violence. This is very much about how the organism deals with the phenomena of humiliation in a physical way. In order to be humiliated, we have to be in a good state. We say a state of either interest or joy. I claim such a sculpture as this that you see in this picture depicts interest and joy. The mother and child are alternating and resonating between interest and joy. There are two movie clips I will show you. What happens in the first clip can happen to anyone at any time of the day. The second clip deals specifically with violence in a very specific and dramatic way. I hope to explain how shame unifies both clips. Shame is a neurophysiological phenomena before it is anything else. It can hit us like a ton of bricks. Our feelings that are physiological are sandwiched between our experience and our reason and responses. Our experiences and responses are very subjective, but the core experience is a very physical one. The first clip is taken from a documentary whose title is referenced here, Don't Look Back. Today, the visual experience will be the most important. I want you to think about the sculptures and photography more than anything else, along with the facial expressions you will see in the movie clips. I think if you leave with a number of these images fixed in your memory, it will be more important than anything else. Tompkins' view of shame and humiliation is unique in the psychological world. But first, there is a broader view. He says there are 9 born with emotions. Here we have pictures of them. I want to emphasize interest and shame. You will note that at the middle bottom there is one called the smell, and we have never heard or known about it. This is one of the fascinating things about the theory. The smell is related to disgust, but has to do with the olfactory system or smelling system. We don't want something because it smells bad. But again, I want here to focus on interest, joy, and shame. Again, please absorb the information contained in the images. Replay them if you wish. Shame, for Sylvan Tompkins, is innate, but most people feel it is not innate. Here we have anger. Is it innate or not? Many people think we learn to be angry. Coming up is a great example of anger from the garden. The little girl certainly does not want her companion to participate in the family gathering. Many will disagree, but I think the facial characteristics here are very much the same in the two. Shame comes in many forms, but our body habitus or posture betrays it, as does the face, especially in children. Adults can learn to mask it. Here in the next photo, we see that the arms get involved. Now this is Tompkins' unique and specific definition of shame. Note, it is ongoing interest or joy, or that is positive affect, as he calls it. This next picture is a remarkable picture. It is of the present mayor of Chicago, Richard Daley. I say it demonstrates shame. Daley has had his interest impeded by being grilled by federal agents. He is here in front of the press after that. The picture on the right is not his baby picture. I say we cannot say he is demonstrating being ashamed, embarrassed, or guilty. Shame has to do with these terms, but they are more complex. Here we can only say that at minimum he is feeling shame. Once again, study the images. In the babies, what is going on? For one, they are not thinking much. Now I'm going to review in detail the interaction of the world with interest and joy in the form of interrupting them. We feel good, and then we feel bad. It is pretty simple. We have to feel good first. Shame and humiliation are, quote, bad feelings, end quote. We have interest and joy, or interest and joy. And something gets in our way, the red arrow, an interruption of our positive feeling. Now in the next slides, what happens when our positive feeling is interrupted? I say that we suffer pain, hurt, and confusion. We suffer shame. I just ask you to think about these ideas. Again, the physical manifestation of shame. Now for our first clip. I am first going to play the clip without comment. Please focus on the faces. I will then comment on the film myself and follow that with the director's DVD commentary. For all the film clips, you might have to adjust your volume up.
We see it on television. Dave Berry. He does all these slow actions, man. He's like the human sloth. You know? He does little things that you do make me glad. I'm in love with you, little thing.
He has a microphone and he drops it down his back.
Make me glad that I feel this way when you walk. I want to hold your hand. Make me glad that I feel this way, little thing. There's a good friend of mine going to go in and play around for good, you know. Yeah. Aren't you playing with him no more? Yeah. So it just happens, you know. King size. 2 encores or 1, man? Raise the car, man. Maybe 1. Who's little matches? Yeah, I don't know, you know, maybe. I would like to do 1. Who did I give the matches to before? Okay. Who else? Who is? They got your room here. Sauce to work. Your glass in there? Yeah, wood.
And it ain't no use in calling out my name, babe, like you never did before. And it ain't no use in calling out my name, babe, I can't hear you anymore.
What time is that?
George Morgan.
George Morgan. He's the one that Mrs. Brown, you better love me, George.
Now for the second viewing of the clip. I want you to note the faces on the participants. Here is Bob Dylan seated with his guitar. He has a face of intense interest throughout the first part of the clip.
Little thing that you do make me glad. I'm in love with you, little thing.
He has a microphone and he drops it down his back.
Make me glad that I feel this way when you walk.
Alan Price at the piano is definitely happy, joyful. Note that the tune he is playing is an upbeat show tune. The camera then pans again to the face of intense interest of Dylan. Everything is going along well at this point. Interest and joy are the words of the day. Then innocently, Dylan asks 2 questions. On reflection, they seem to be in reverse order, so they may not be so innocent. He seems to know something is up and does not know how to ask. He first asks, what are the animals doing for a piano player? And then he asks Alan if he isn't still playing with them. Alan quickly says something about a friend under his breath and then turns to the camera. Shame. We see Alan's face collapse. Alan has been exposed. He has been fired from the band. Everyone in the room knows it. At this moment, Dylan hits a blues chord. I will comment on this several times again. The setting of all this is that Dylan is warming up to go on stage at the Royal Albert Hall in London. A little of the backstory for those of you unfamiliar with the film and or Dylan is that he is now riding very high on his fame and is doing what is called his last acoustic tour. There was much to do at the time about him selling out to the electric sound. But of course I want to insist that who these people are is completely irrelevant to the human drama that goes on. It can happen to any of us at any moment. But let us return to the moment of exposure. At that very moment, the music changes. Dylan hits the blues chord, as I said. Alan turns and chimes in with Dylan. Recall very well the body posture of John. And now think about the first image you saw from the sculpture garden, the one with the 2 people with their backs to each other. Recall too that he starts moving to the end of the piano. The camera again pans to Dylan. Note his face. It is flattened out. It is quite amazing the anatomical changes in his face. This is a face of shame. In a moment I will play the clip one last time with the director's comment. In that commentary, at this point, the director says, there is that face, it cuts right through you. He thinks it is because Dylan has become hyper-aware of the fact that they are filming. I think this could not be further from the facts. Dylan is devastated because Alan lost his job. That is not to say that the director is not very, very sensitive to what is going on in the room. Now, note that Dylan wants to withdraw. He says that he doesn't feel like singing. Then note that Alan has scooted all the way down to the end of the piano and now takes his drink and cigarettes and leaves the room. Keep in mind that they are both withdrawing. Now, at the end of the clip, note several more actions of Alan. One is he comes back in the room and gets what appears to be a beer. He then goes to the piano and pops the top. This was 1964 after all, but note, this is his instrument and he damages it. He then laughs a bit. Here is Dylan on stage. Before going on to the commentary, I want to focus on our neuroanatomy. Joy. I think it is indisputable that we have these innate feelings. Interest. Again, please just try to take in the images. The moment Alan is exposed. Dylan's reaction to the exposure. Everything was going fine, and then something happened, even though it was inadvertent on Dylan's part. Thus, the third title of the talk, quote, an inadvertent case of shaming, end quote. Pain, hurt, and shame resulted. As I have said, I'm going to ask you to view this clip one more time. This has the commentary of the director and Dylan's road manager at the time. The road manager is the big burly guy standing in the corner by John and the piano. Why I want you to do this is that I listened to this after I noted the dynamic in this scene. I was then so impressed with the commentator's sensitivity to the same elements that I saw. Be attentive to when Pennebaker talks about Dylan's face. He actually gets ahead of himself. He comments on the wrong frame at first. He later catches up and nails the quote-unquote shame face of Dylan and says, there it is, as I have already mentioned. It cuts right through you, again attributing it to the presence of the cameras. If there's a core moment in this presentation, it would be this expression and the ideas that here are these people sitting down 30 or 40 years later, and albeit they recognize the pain, they cannot name it. All they can say is, there's the face. If you follow my point, we now can name the face. It is a face displaying the affect of shame. Now note that along with the explanation about cameras that they give, they also comment heavily on the role the music plays. They too notice the change in tempo of the music. They say this is what happens with musicians. Music breaks out. The value of this phenomena I will comment on in a few minutes. This dynamic change in tempo, I think, gives more credence to my feeling that he is not reacting to the camera, that is Dylan. Dylan's mind is on his friend and his plight. He is in the moment, as we say. So please watch it once again with the commentary.
And it's an amazing moment. Alan starts to play blues, and Dylan comes right in with him. And in the middle of it, he kind of looked up at me. He gave me the strangest look. And I thought, he's certainly aware that I'm doing this, and he thinks it's not, he's a little worried about it. He just, but he doesn't make any effort to stop, or he doesn't give me any signal or anything. But I just still remember that look. It was a strange look. It was like a pained look. You're taking advantage of somebody's pain here, you know, or are you? I mean, I could see he was beginning to think about what we were doing in terms of the filming, and maybe for the first time. I think most of the time he didn't think about it much. Here, here's the look. Ah, it's an incredible moment. Just you know, in moments like this that just take hold of you, I never think now I better film him, now I better film it. I have no memory of what makes me go shoot where. I kind of just go with it, and it happens.
It's great because this is how music breaks out at the moment's notice, you know.
Under pressure.
When musicians are in the room.
See that he's seeing it on filming. There, that's the look. It's burned a hole right in me, right through the camera. I can still remember absolutely. I thought, I'm trespassing here. Be wary.
Don't feel like singing.
Oh man. Bang. Center. Right there. Door closes. It's the center of the film. The thing is, in almost every film that's ever really worked for me, there's always a center point. It's like you bend it, and there's one place that's the top, and then it goes down.
Now back to some didactic material. I call this new material simply because it hasn't been introduced yet, but it solidifies and captures in succinct form all that we have seen so far. This is how Donald Nathanson summarized much of Tomkins's work. He says that when we have this pain of interruption, we have 5 activities that we might engage in. 4 are seen here. The first would be a desire to withdraw or run away from the situation. Then we might blame ourselves. I am not worthy. I am stupid, etc. Next, if these maneuvers do not suffice to give us solace, we might avoid. Here we put all of our addictions, small and large. If all else fails, we then will most likely attack others or blame others. It's your fault. I go away. I blame myself. I eat. I smoke, do drugs, sleep, and then I attack. These are our behaviors after we feel. We feel, and then we do. We behave in a certain way. But we feel first. We feel, do, and think, or we are feeling, thinking, and doing, and thinking is a type of doing. Much of what we do is automatic. Let us return to the film. Here are some clips edited out. Alan withdraws from the room. He gets a beer, avoids. Finally here, he attacks the piano, actually damaging it. Remember, this is his instrument. He is a piano player. Then, what do you think he's saying here to himself while biting his tongue? I might suggest that he might be castigating himself for even being in the room. Remember, too, Dylan wants to withdraw. Now, this is very important. That is, when Dylan switches to the blues, at the moment that John's face collapses, I said I would return to this. Remember, the commentators thought this whole dynamic was wonderful. Of course it is in a way. As they say, this is what happens. Music breaks out. Yet, is it so wonderful? Is it not, in our new language, yet another form of avoidance? It seems to me that Alan needs some verbal reassurance. He needs a phone number for a new job, expression of sympathy, something. Of course, this is what the blues is in great part, but is it enough? Why is this so? Because this is the Alan we want, the happy Alan. What we get is Alan in a tailspin of withdrawal, avoidance, and attack. Many that see this will try, in my mind, to distance themselves from what I say is the great pain here, by asking how old these guys are, and then saying, oh, they are acting immaturely. Of course, my point is that, one, we have little or no control over these habitual actions until we do, until we have been taught about them and practiced. And two, we all act in these ways from birth until death. I want to get in here that the action takes place at just about the 60-minute mark in the Dylan clip. And this is commented on in a way by the director, if you remember. He says that when the door to the room closes, that is the middle of the film. In collecting a number of scenes from what most everyone would consider great movies, I have found that an extraordinary number of my clips come at about the 60-minute mark. All of these scenes are, in my mind, about shame. The question then arises, how does this come about? Movies from the 20s to the present. There seems to be some intuition playing out that at this point in the movie, something cathartic needs to take place. I certainly don't see how it can be or could have been any conscious awareness of shame.